Welcome to Week 10, everybody. Kicking it off tonight with the Colts and the Titans, and we've got some AFC home games to preview today, plus Jacksonville, Green Bay, and Buffalo, Arizona. Adam Azer with Jamie Eisenberg and Heath Cummings, and this episode is sponsored by Express. Express is all new and all about you with a fresh assortment of casual, versatile, and super comfortable styles. Find out more about Express and their exclusive offer later in the show. And yeah, I got a big order of Express clothing coming. Awesome stuff and a great way for you to save money. We'll tell you about it later. What's going on, guys? You know, I think we got some pretty tough calls this week. Does it feel that way to you? Like kind of a tricky slate this week?
Very much so.
Really?
There's some players I have ranked in certain spots. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
But then you look and it's like Jonathan Taylor is one of them. I think everybody, especially coming off of last week, would have said on Sunday night, you're not going to be able to start Jonathan Taylor until we see something different. And now he's in my top 20 running backs, and I can't find anybody else I want to put ahead of him.
I mean, for me, it's Mike Davis and Giovanni Bernard. I mean, you're talking about guys that are going to get a lot of work. If Davis for sure at this point, and Gio, we're still waiting to find out on Joe Mixon, but those are not easy matchups for those guys at all. But, they've been, for the most part, so successful every time they've gotten this opportunity. And so it's just one of those scenarios of, I guess I got to play them, and just kind of hope for the best. And format matters, I think, for both those guys as well.
I was all set to start Chase Edmonds over Jonathan Taylor, but I don't know that I can do that anymore because, Kenyon Drake's back at practice.
Yeah, but that's good. He's better with Kenyon Drake there.
I don't know about that.
What do you mean?
No.
Well, I mean, statistically, yes, he is.
Well, but for fantasy, no, I'll take the 20 carries instead of the 4 carries. Yeah. And, Jamie, you talked about Mike Davis and Giovanni Bernard, but I think we usually get excited to start backup running backs who get the opportunity, but those two guys have tough matchups. Bernard's not, Pittsburgh's defense has been a little bit leaky lately in terms of running, but Jerick McKinnon and JaMychal Hasty at New Orleans, that's not easy. If DJ Dallas gets another start, the Rams give up the 6th fewest points to running backs. If you have to go with Rex Burkhead, Damian Harris did practice, but I mean, Baltimore gives up the fewest fantasy points to running back. So even the replacement guys could be rough this week. So
absolutely. Yeah. It's nice to have Miles Sanders back, for that side of things. But yeah, it's one of those, and look, Kenyon Drake, I mean, he's a guy that has a shot if he's 100% healthy, but, in terms of some of these guys that, normally you'd be like, I'm thrilled.
Right.
It's not as easy.
All right. So let's be more optimistic, Jamie. Give me the player you love this week.
Jared Goff. He's the start of the week. Love the setup for him. Just the numbers are just staggering what the Seahawks allow. Basically, it's 30 fantasy points per game on average. 29.2 is what they give up to opposing quarterbacks. 2 of the last 3 quarterbacks to face them went over 40 fantasy points. He averages over 330 passing yards per game against them in his last 4. It's just the perfect setup. And, look, he was awful the last time he stepped on the field. The Dolphins just completely frustrated him. You were to say to any fantasy player, your quarterback's going to throw the ball 60 times. What's your expectation from the fantasy points? Well, it's not 12 because that's what he had.
Awful.
Goffle. It was Goffle.
Good. I like that.
But he will not be Goffle this week. This is a great week for Jared Goff. I think, it's a good week for quarterbacks. I have him 8. I would like to put him somewhere in the top 3, but it's just hard to do that.
Okay. Heath, how about you? Player you love this week?
I think it's Mike Davis. It's a difficult matchup for running against. And that his workload has been just a little bit spotty recently, but you just look at the last time they faced Tampa Bay and he got 1 carry and played 24 snaps and scored 15.4 PPR points. They're going to have to get the ball out quick. They're not going to be able to run it very well. So I do expect a large number of targets for Davis. And like Jamie said, with him and Giovanni Bernard both, they've just been so good. They've got maybe 1 or 2. I don't know if Gio's ever actually had a bad game without Joe Mixon, but Davis has maybe 1 or 2 things that slightly concern you. Other than that, he's been a top 12 running back, and we have very few of those right now in fantasy football.
I will say, just to kind of stay in the same theme, Adam, there is one replacement option that could be great, and that's Duke Johnson.
Yeah.
One guy that's, stepping into a very positive situation. based on what the opportunity is. I mean, we just saw it, 20 total touches in the game where David Johnson got knocked out. And Romeo Crennel said on Wednesday, his status is up in the air, didn't practice. We don't know if he's going to get cleared. So he could be, in terms of the replacement guys. And Heath makes a great point for Mike Davis. Hopefully it's the early part of the Christian McCaffrey absence, Mike Davis, as opposed to the latter part, because that guy wasn't as good. And Giovanni Bernard, same thing, but Duke Johnson may be the better of that trio of guys that are getting a good opportunity this week. I don't have it ranked that way. I'm sure Heath doesn't either, but there is a very big possibility that Duke Johnson is the best backup running back this week.
Is there another Texans running back that they might throw in the mix because they don't want to give that workload to Duke, perhaps? Or you think it's just Duke?
Yeah, I think they had CJ Prosise on the roster, if I'm not mistaken.
Which is like the one guy in the NFL who's not taking early down work away from Duke Johnson.
Right.
Okay.
Check.
Yeah, and I think that if Mark Ingram misses another game, this is I would think a really good setup for J.K. Dobbins and even Gus Edwards, right?
Yeah, it was. I mean, look, I'm sure the Ravens are happy to have Mark Ingram back at practice, but when they showed the video of him walking out with Lamar Jackson with his helmet and pads on, I was like, oh man, now we don't get to see one more game of J.K. Dobbins and even Gus Edwards. It's looking like Ingram's going to play again, so
okay,
could be messy.
All right, so the players that we love, Jamie said Jared Goff, Heath said Mike Davis. Players to avoid. Heath, you want to start?
Cam Newton.
Okay. Yeah.
He is having such a fascinating year. He's on pace for 3,000 passing yards, 17 rush touchdowns, 4 passing touchdowns.
Yeah.
This is a bad matchup against a very good defense. And I don't want to drop Cam Newton because I think I want to start him next week. I believe they play Houston next week, right?
Yes.
Yep.
But he's just barely inside my top 24. I would start about 6 different streamers over him.
Yeah, I agree on that. Buddy Howell is the other running back on the Texans roster. No CJ Prosise.
Okay. Duke Johnson it is. Jamie, give me a sit.
DJ Moore is just so hard to trust right now. I mean, the targets the last 2 weeks, the way that this game feels like it's going to go. He was great against them in week 2. Absolutely a stud. So was Robbie Anderson. Teddy Bridgewater threw the ball 49 times in that game, or 42 times. They were just, miserable in terms of what happened. That's the game McCaffrey got hurt too. So that's, the game Heath is referencing. Mike Davis came off the bench and had 8 catches. So they're probably going to have a similar game plan, but now you have Curtis Samuel in the mix, and I just don't know what to make of DJ Moore at this point. Like, I don't want to say I don't like him, and I'm going to be forced to start him in a couple of leagues, but it's just so frustrating because he's so good and they just don't use him. I don't get it.
Okay, well, and that game could get ugly, which might be good for him because the last 2 times the Buccaneers lost, they beat the Panthers by 14 and they beat the Packers by 28. They just got embarrassed by New Orleans. They might smash the Panthers. We shall see. What's the spread on that game? Anyone know? Off the top of your head?
It might be 4.5. I think they're on the road.
It is. They are on the road and they are 5.5 point favorite.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get into some. Well, I wanted to talk about those replacement running backs, but I think we kind of did. I want to promote some stuff real quick, by the way. You got to listen to FFT in 5. It's a fun podcast, 5 minutes long. First thing in the morning, ask Alexa to play Fantasy Football Today in 5 podcast, and bam, comes right on. We got our starter sit pregame chat on Twitch today from 4 to 5:30 p.m. Eastern, twitch.com/FF Today. If you haven't joined us on Twitch, you're missing out. Another good time. Frank and Chris and Jacob Gibbs are going to come on, and we'll from 4 to 5:30 p.m. Eastern, we'll answer all of your questions. And the 2020 Masters is finally here, and the First Cut podcast is all your golf needs as Tiger Woods begins his green jacket defense this week at Augusta National. So tune in for tournament previews, picks, and best bets, plus round-by-round recaps as the world's best tee off today. The First Cut crew is on the scene at Augusta National, ready to bring you every insight into a tradition unlike any other. Listen to the First Cut Golf Podcast wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Yeah, I had this whole segment here about running backs with tough matchups, replacement running backs. Mike Davis, Jerick McKinnon, Jermichael Hasty, DJ Dallas, Giovanni Bernard, Rex Burkhead. Don't know how many of them are actually going to get that opportunity. Duke Johnson has a good matchup. I don't know. The segment kind of already was.
The Geo one is fascinating to me because the Steelers, I think they allow the fewest receptions to running backs. I think it's 22 on the season. And you said it, Adam. Teams have been running on them lately to a degree.
A little bit, yeah.
For what the Steelers started the season. I mean, obviously the Devin Bush injury factors into that, but he's not going to have a lot of success running the ball. That's just not his game. It's going to be the total yards. It's going to be what he does catching the ball. So if they can contain him through the air, we'll see how he does. But it's hard to get away from what Gio's been. Like you said, almost every time Joe Mixon's out, he has a great performance.
Yeah, this is from The Athletic. The Steelers have now given up 10 runs of 14 yards or longer over the past 14 quarters, ever since Devin Bush went out. So it's not like guys are running all over them, but the Ravens did. Tony Pollard had 2 runs of 20 yards. So that's a lot. That's 10 runs of 14 yards or longer over the past 14 quarters. I'm thinking Lamar Jackson is part of that too, which is a little deceiving. But
right, and the first game, which on the flip side of that is that was a lot of Derrick Henry going into the middle of the defense, not having big runs. So factor that into it too. The other side of it, right?
Yeah. So it's again, it's not a great matchup, but it's a better matchup than it used to be. All right. Well, anyway, we'll cover all those running backs. The bottom line is, you look at the running back landscape. If you get a guy who's starting, if you get a guy who's going to get a lot of touches, you're going to have to start him in most scenarios. Fair to say?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Listen, I talked to you about Express, and I got a lot of stuff last night because I told you I was waiting for my first round of clothes to come in. I got a button-down shirt, a T-shirt, and this really nice sweater that I was going to wear on the show today. Take a look at this. Take a look at this. YouTubers. The only reason I'm not wearing it, it's really not cold yet. It's kind of hot in New York. Nice weather. So I would have been sweating my head off if I had worn this sweater today. But it's a beautiful, it fits me perfectly. I got my size. Yesterday, I ordered 2 more shirts. I ordered a blazer. I ordered a tie. I ordered 2 ties. I ordered some dress socks. These are all the things they have on Express. They also have like cologne and watches. Great place for men and a great store for women as well. So go to express.com and shop. The fit, the comfort. I mean, most athletic or taller men don't think Express can fit them. Heath's pretty tall. He's fairly athletic. He loves all of his Express clothes. They fit him perfectly. They got the Luxe Comfort Knit Collection, which I got one of the shirts from there. I can't wait for that. Sharp details, soft fabrics, like wearing your favorite sweats. They've got jeans. They've got suits. Just great stuff at Express. And, it's just nice to get clothes that fit you well. It's nice to get clothes that you look good in. And these are different. I mean, I've never seen shirts like this. Just different, just kind of stand out. And you feel good. You feel confident when you put on clothes that you like. So to get the exclusive offer, text football to 397-737. Get $25 off your $50 purchase. Text football to 397-737. One more time. Send a text message to 397-737. Football is the word text there. Get $25 off your $50 purchase. All right, let's do some 60-second rankings disputes. These are going to be good ones here. We've got Tyler Boyd, Christian Kirk, John Brown. Big differences in the rankings. Heath much higher on Tyler Boyd and much lower on Kirk and Brown than Jamie is. So why don't we start with that? Tyler Boyd, Heath. Jamie's got him 24th in PPR, 31st in non-PPR. Sounds like Jamie hates Tyler Boyd.
No, he's moved up. Refresh, buddy. Refresh.
Okay, where is he now?
He is 21 in PPR, I think 24 in non-PPR.
All right, I'm skipping Tyler Boyd. Let's go to the next 2.
Yeah,
These are both-
unfortunately, John Brown has moved as well in my rankings. So this is like, I think these are still interesting players to talk about.
Yeah, all right, yeah, because he was 41st for you in PPR. He was 22nd for Jamie. Where is he now?
27th.
Damn it! All right.
Yeah, it's
I'll be the devil's advocate there.
I think
though.
Like Drew Locke is someone that I think we could still have a debate about.
Okay.
Has not moved. I saw him in the rankings disputes, and he is still a dispute. I have him right around 20th. I think Dave and Jamie have him right around 12th. And the main thing I think for me is I'm not as confident that he's going to get to garbage time. We've had some, Jamie and Pete have had some fun poking fun at my Jake Luton garbage time statement, but Drew Locke legitimately has fallen down by 21 points each of the last 2 weeks in the third quarter. And almost all of his production, in fact, like fantasy wise, all of his production has come then. All 6 of his touchdowns over the past 2 weeks have come after his team's fallen down by 21 points late in the second half. He's thrown for over 400 yards in those circumstances. Before that, he's mostly been awful. And accuracy wise, he's mostly been awful. So it's like he has to get to the prevent defense. And I'm just not as confident this game will get to that situation.
Okay. So Jamie, you talk about Drew Locke, who you have, I think, 12th. And Denver, by the way, they air it out. They have the most intended air yards per pass attempt in the NFL. So they are throwing the ball downfield.
They are also 30th in completed air yards.
Well, they're trying, Heath. Okay, Jamie, 12th for Drew Locke.
Yeah, I mean, Heath has a point. They may not have to get to the fourth quarter for Locke to have success. But this is also a Raiders defense that's given up a lot of production to quarterbacks outside of the win game to Baker Mayfield. And so I just look at this team. They're struggling to run the ball right now. Their defense is struggling to stop people. And I think Derek Carr's going to have a good game. He actually has, very solid production at home. So I think they will be playing with a lead in terms of the Raiders. And so this is one of 4 or 5 games with the projected total to be over 50. I don't think it's going to be all Raiders. I don't think it's going to be Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay. So I think Locke is going to be not to the same extent that he has been the last couple of weeks where he's 25 and 30 something fantasy points. But I think 24, 25 is kind of a good number to look for him. I just like to set, 3 straight games with 40 or more attempts. 2 of those have been very good. His receiving core, I think, is the strength of his team right now. So I like the way Locke is getting you his fantasy production. However he gets there, he's getting there.
Okay. So let me go back to John Brown, who I know is no longer much of a dispute. He's changed in the rankings quite a bit. But I think I gave that stat that the Cardinals, I just gave this on Tuesday, the Cardinals have not given up big games to 2 wide receivers once this year. So if we're expecting Stephon Diggs to be, great, and he'll probably see a lot of Patrick Peterson, so maybe he won't. But this is not a matchup that looks great, I guess, in that regard. Although I will say the Cardinals have had mostly a pretty easy schedule, but not once this year have 2 wide receivers scored double-digit fantasy points in non-PPR or 14 or more PPR fantasy points against the Cardinals. So why do you guys both have John Brown now in your top 30, Jamie?
Can I run down the schedule for you, please?
Yeah.
All right, you tell me the second receiver on these teams. First week, San Francisco.
Yeah, they didn't even have Debo, so they
didn't. Second week, Washington.
Yeah, Dontrell Libid.
Third week, Detroit. Okay, you want to say Marvin Jones? That's fine. Yeah. Fourth week, Carolina. They did a good job in containing the second guy. It was the Robbie Anderson show. Week 5, the Jets.
Okay.
Week 6, the Cowboys. That's one of the games you're referencing. Yep. 2 guys over 13.
Yep.
Week 7.
But they didn't, right. But CeeDee Lamb was like 7 for 65 or something, right?
7 for 64. I'll take 7 for 64 in PPR. That's not bad.
Okay.
And if you tell me that John Brown's getting 10 targets like CeeDee Lamb did, I'll sign up for that right now.
All right. Very different players, but go ahead.
Week 7. This is the Tyler Lockett game where DK Metcalf had a touchdown called back on a bogus holding call.
Okay, they shut down DK. The best job against DK Metcalf.
Yes, they did.
You're not really helping your case right now. All right, go ahead.
Well, I mean, again, tell me which of those teams. There's 2 teams that I just named you. 3 teams that I just named you that have legit number 2 wide receivers or a pair of wide receivers, right?
Uh-huh.
And then week 9 was Miami, where one guy got hurt and 2 guys got over 12 fantasy points.
Yeah, but I mean, Parker didn't have that good of a game.
My favorite thing about this discussion is that it shows like you can argue that they've given up 12 fantasy points to duos lots of times, but they've never given up 14 fantasy points to duos.
12's not that good.
And John Brown is ranked in the 20s, which is kind of the 12 to 14 point range.
Yeah. I think I'm playing devil's advocate. I want to be clear on that. I don't think I have the guts to sit John Brown because you expect a lot of points in this game, right? So, you're over for shootout. And let's be honest, it might be John Brown who's better than Stephon Diggs because Patrick Peterson's been awesome. Can we at least throw that out there?
Peterson's been really hot and cold.
I think he's been real good though.
So Peterson has said this. He said this to Prisco, and he, Pete relayed this to us going into the Seattle game that he does not like smaller, shiftier wide receivers. I don't know a big receiver on the Buffalo side of things. So this could be a bad game for him, bad matchup for him. I mean, he's going to make things uncomfortable for whoever he faces, but it's not going to be like where he shuts down a bigger physical guy like a DK Metcalf, like a Devontae Parker. Those guys are tailor-made for what Patrick Peterson likes to do and be physical with guys.
Kind of feels like he might give up a long touchdown and get an interception in this game. Like he's facing Josh Allen. There could be opportunities for sure.
Well, you're going to hear very shortly from Jacob Gibbs on why this is a good game setting up anyway for Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs. One more rankings dispute. Is Christian Kirk still a dispute?
Oh, I thought it was Hunter Henry.
Well, what about Kirk?
Yeah. Probably it's still, like, I think I've got him in the 30s. So,
okay. So Jamie's got him 16th in 19th in PPR as of yesterday afternoon. Heath has him 27th in non-PPR, but 35th in PPR. Christian Kirk in this matchup against Buffalo. Heath, you're the low guy on Kirk. Let's remember 60 seconds, guys. So 30 for Heath. Go.
Yeah, I'm trying to come around on Christian Kirk. It takes a little while for the projections to catch up. No, I still think it's going to be hard for me to rank a guy too high who's not getting a lot of volume on a regular basis. And he's been awesome. His efficiency's been great, and he does have 8 targets each of the past 2 weeks and 7 and 3 of 4. He doesn't have a game all season with more than 5 catches, and the yardage has been really sporadic. So I'm generally going to be lower on the guys that are this reliant on touchdowns for fantasy production.
His quarterback is awesome. You said it, 3 of the last 4 with at least 7 targets. I don't know how much more you need to see from this guy to start to say, I'm just going to play him until it stops. Yeah, he's great.
I think he's in a very, very similar range to John Brown. Like right in that same tier where like the guys in that group that score touchdowns are going to be really good this week, and the guys that don't probably won't.
Well, where are you ranking Will Fuller at this point? Because the target share is kind of the same.
He's much, much higher. The target share being kind of the same kind of froze me. But yeah, I guess it's not too different. He's got 3 games with more than 5 catches, but
recently.
Yeah, no, that's true. The last couple of games for sure.
Okay, we got 2 segments left, then we'll get into the games. We got the Startometer and a pre-recorded segment from Jacob Gibbs. And we're going to play that right now. Jacob's going to give you 3 of his favorite stats for Fantasy Week 10. Now, look, he's going to tell you about Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs. Were you going to sit them? No, but this could be helpful for DFS. This could be helpful for prop bets, things like that. And I think just as football fans, you will appreciate that. I want to say the audio quality on this, not quite as good as we'd like. Not terrible, but we'll get
he likes Diggs now.
Who, me?
Didn't you say he likes Diggs and Allen?
Yeah, he does.
And why would you say you're going to sit them?
Oh, no, I just meant like he's not going to convince you to start them because you're already starting them.
Gotcha.
But like sorry, thank you for making me clarify that. Yeah, like I said, DFS plays, things like that. Last week, he had a great stat on Kirk Cousins, for example. And for more of these, listen to the Saturday bonus episode of Fantasy Football Today in 5. Okay, here's Jacob Gibbs.
What's up, FFT? This is Sportsline Fantasy Analyst Jacob Gibbs, and I'm back with 3 more advanced stats for you heading into Week 10. Stat number 1. Over the past 2 weeks, Jerry Jeudy has 396 air yards and 24 targets. That's insane. He's first in targets and air yards during that time. Jeudy gets the Raiders in Week 10. Vegas is bad against the pass, but what really has me excited for Jeudy and the Broncos in this spot is the Raiders' inability to create pressure. Vegas ranks 20th in pressure rate, and they're 31st in blitz rate. This is crucial for Jeudy because Drew Locke has been the league's worst quarterback when under pressure. Locke is dead last in passer rating when blitzed. He's completed just 40% of his passes for 4.4 yards per attempt when under pressure over the last 2 seasons. Against a Raiders defense with a blitz rate below 20%, Locke should have plenty of time to stand in and find Jeudy downfield in Week 10. Stat number 2. I know you hated Antonio Gibson owners, but J.D. McKissic is not going away. There's good news, though, and that is that Washington is finding creative ways to get both backs on the field. 38% of McKissick's snaps over the past 2 games have come in the slot, which is up from 10% in the first 6 games. Moving him to the slot more often allows Washington to get both McKissic and Gibson on the field at the same time. McKissic had a career-high 83% snap rate last week, and Gibson was still on the field for nearly half of the plays. McKissick's 14 targets last week were also a career high, and next up is a Detroit Lions defense that has allowed almost 14 DraftKings points per game to opposing running backs on receiving stats alone. Only the Packers have given up more receiving fantasy points to opposing running backs. With McKissic playing more in the slot, both he and Gibson are fantasy viable options against the Lions this week. And stat number 3, the Arizona Cardinals rank in the top 5 in both man coverage use and press coverage use. That is great news for Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs. Allen ranks 22nd in the NFL in passer rating against zone coverage, but is up to 5th against man coverage. Stephon Diggs has averaged 7.8 yards per target versus zone, but 9.9 versus man. He's been targeted on 22% of his routes run versus zone, which is good, but it's nothing compared to his 32% rate when facing man coverage. Diggs is also second in the NFL in receiving yardage against press coverage this season. He's been targeted on 30% of his routes versus press coverage, which is the highest rate among qualified receivers. The 56-point over-under in this game and the heavy use of man and press coverage by Arizona's defense both point toward a potential eruption spot for Allen and Diggs in Week 10. All right, that's all I got. Thanks for letting me share my stats with you today. If you liked them, give me a follow on Twitter at @JGibbs_23. I'll be tweeting out nerdy stats on there all week long.
All right. Thank you, Jacob. That's great stuff. He does an awesome job and great follow on Twitter as well. So Jerry Jeudy, most air yards over the last 2 weeks, and Drew Locke, much worse under pressure. That is not Vegas's forte. J.D. McKissic on the field a ton, including with Antonio Gibson playing out of the slot a lot, and a great matchup against Detroit. And Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs set up for good things in this game. Let's go to the Startometer here. The last 3 games we're going to preview are Jacksonville at Green Bay, New England at Baltimore, and Buffalo at Arizona. DJ Chark Startometer.
12.
9.
The number 2 Green Bay wide receiver.
2.
3. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, hold on. Let me see if I can change your mind. Got to get my stat of the game here. The Jaguars are the worst ever in the last 5 games. They have allowed 84 yards or a touchdown to 9 wide receivers in 5 games. Huh?
I mean, you'd have Alan Lazard coming off a long layoff and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who knows what he does. I mean, it's just so hard to say, trust these guys. Great DFS play. Because if Marquez Valdez-Scantling can have a 2 touchdown game, and that's the type of setup you have for him. But I don't know how many people in redraft are going to start him. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I think that, and this is just a possibility. I don't really look at the weather too much until Sunday morning, but I was on Pick Six podcast yesterday with Will, and he said that this game and the Browns game are 2 games that could possibly be wind games again this week. So just to watch, like I said, I don't generally look at it too much until later in the weekend, but it's a possibility.
Okay. And that's pretty much it. Robert Tonyan. Jaguars are horrible against tight ends. Jeez.
4.
Yeah. I mean, it's just been so hard to trust since Adams has been there.
Okay. Yeah. I wish I said the Jaguars were going to go 0-16. Then they won their first game, and then they've been just as bad as I thought. New England, Baltimore. Yes.
Well, one guy that I'd put on the Startometer that you might not think should be on the Startometer, but I kind of like Jamal Williams a little bit this week as a flex option.
Okay. Good stuff. New England at Baltimore. Cam Newton, we already said to sit. Any Patriots running back?
I would sit every Patriots player.
I'd like to. Jacoby Myers is the best flex? Maybe?
Right.
Yeah. Unless, if Harris is out, then Burkhead has some appeal, but it sounds like he's going to play. And then we don't know Sony Michel, but it's just totally different setup from last week.
Okay. Would you go with Jacoby Myers or Alan Lazard or Marquez Valdez-Scantling?
Myers.
I would go with Myers in PPR, but I would go with those other guys in non-PPR.
Would you start Myers over Darius Slayton?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Then for Baltimore, Marquise Brown. Well, we'll talk about the running backs later because if Ingram plays, then it's a mess. But Marquise Brown.
5.
4.
How about Lamar Jackson?
9.
Okay.
Mark Andrews makes me nervous.
Mark Andrews. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Look, they have played every elite tight end. They've done a good job. Good job.
Well, lucky for Mark Andrews. He's not an elite tight end anymore.
Kelsey had 70 yards. We had 3 catches. Kittle had 50 yards. Waller was terrible. None of them scored.
That was a joke, but I do think Bill Belichick has bigger things to be concerned about taking away in this game than Mark Andrews.
Well, it's just their defense just takes away tight ends, and it carries over to Miami too. Look at what the Dolphins have done. The system works. It's a
and the Lions
defense.
too, right?
And the Lions too. It's a very fair point. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Not
the Titans.
25 combined PPR points from those 3 guys.
Oh, well, okay. So you starting any streamers over Mark Andrews?
Austin Hooper and Dallas Goedert, if you want to put them in that category. I like Jimmy Graham better than him in non-PPR because they're essentially the same guy. It's just touchdown dependent. Eric Ebron, if he's still in that category. So, yeah, those guys I'm starting over Mark Andrews.
And finally, Buffalo at Arizona. Buffalo's running back?
Zach Moss?
Yes, Zach Moss would be my favorite, but he'd be a 2.
He's a 6 for me in non-PPR and a 4 in PPR.
Yeah, a little bit. I don't even know. I should have probably harped on this a little bit more, but Devin Singletary had 2 carries last week, and Moss had, I think, 9. Not that he did a ton with them, but maybe we're starting to see something there. And how about Kenyon?
Oh, we've seen it. We've seen it.
Yeah, I guess so. But like the week before, they had the same amount of carries. How about Kenyon Drake? I mean, how about Kenyon Drake? Kenyon Drake if he plays.
5.
7 in non-PPR, 6 in PPR.
That's it. I mean, everything else is pretty simple. I think we talked about Kirk. We talked about Brown. No tight ends in this game. Beasley. They've had some troubles with slot receivers, by the way. Those Cardinals. Cole Beasley.
2.
2 in non-PPR. I'd say 4 in PPR.
And you'll start the quarterbacks. And here we go to the games. Denver at Las Vegas. I think like this game, and I think maybe the Steelers game. A lot of tough calls in these ones. Your stat of the game is about the air yards. You've heard enough about it. So Denver likes to air it out. You don't get a lot of pressure from the Raiders. They have the 4th worst passer rating on attempts of 20+ yards downfield, the Raiders. So you think that would bode well for Judy and Locke and maybe even Tim Patrick. Locke, we already debated. You want to hear the 60-second rankings dispute? Jamie's got him, I think, 12th, and I'll get the updated rankings. Heath around 20th, worried about the non-garbage time. Is it easy to just sit the Denver running backs? Sit the running backs?
I don't think it's easy to. I think they're, borderline starters flex. I like Lindsey better than Gordon in non-PPR and Gordon better than Lindsey in PPR, but they're both outside my top 24, and that's saying something given what the running back landscape looks like this week. But, their playing time is close to even. It was a little bit different last week, but, they're using Lindsey a little bit more on passing downs last week, or at least they did. He had more targets than Gordon. So it's just a very frustrating experience right now.
It was so weird. I realized this like Wednesday that Melvin Gordon actually had more yards and fantasy points than Philip Lindsay last week, because it felt like and touch wise, Philip Lindsay kind of took over, and they finally gave the ball to Philip Lindsay, and he nothing. So yeah, they're flexes, but it's gonna be hard to sit them.
Okay.
Gordon the last 2 weeks has just been miserable with Lindsay playing the full game. It's taken a Lindsay injury for Gordon to be good.
Yeah. By the way, I realized I did not do any of the news and notes. So there's really not much that you probably don't know. David Johnson, unlikely to play. McCaffrey, unlikely to play. Mostert and Coleman are out this week. Chris Carson, status unclear. Joe Mixon was limited in practice. Nick Chubb is not a lock to play this week. Kenyon Drake did return to practice. Damian Harris was limited in practice. Mark Ingram sounds like he's trending in the right direction. Justin Jackson is probably not going to practice this week, so I can't imagine. It's not looking good for Justin Jackson. So I will ask you in 1 second, Kailyn Bellage or a Broncos running back, but give me 1 minute. LaMichael Pirine might be the featured back rest of season, will be the featured back rest of season for the Jets. They're on bye this week, but
that's a report. That's a report.
Okay. Yeah, that's a report. They're going to reportedly give LaMichael Pirine an opportunity here. So you might want to stash him. Preston Williams is on IR, out at least 3 games. Lamar Jackson said that defenses know Baltimore's plays. So that's interesting. They're calling him out at the line of scrimmage, basically. And Mecole Hardman's on the reserve.
That's hard to say. Run.
Yeah. Pass to Marquise Brown.
I can tell you the Vikings plays too. It's run.
They're giving it to Cook. All right. So Kailyn Bellage or a Denver running back.
Denver running back.
Both Denver running backs.
Yeah.
Okay. How about a Dolphins running back or a Denver running back?
Both Denver running backs.
Yep.
God, running back sucks this week. So yeah. I know you're excited about Jerry Jeudy, right?
Yeah.
Heath?
I'm excited about him long term. He's a high end number 3, low end number 2 type wide receiver.
I mean, the dude's got 24 targets in 2 games. It's pretty clear that the door has been open and they're not closing it anytime soon.
The Chargers defense is so bad. The Falcons defense is so bad. Those are the last 2 matchups for Jerry Jeudy.
Well,
that
and
matter?
his quarterback threw 89 passes in those 2 games.
Yeah, he's thrown 129 passes in the last 3.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that'll just, again, I think it kind of comes back to the same discussion we had about Locke. How quickly does this game get out of hand?
Well, the Raiders score more points per game, I think, than both the Falcons and the Chargers.
Yeah, this is going to be, I mean, I'm honestly shocked that the over-under is 49. This feels like it should be like close to 60.
And Tim Patrick has a higher ADOT than Jerry Jeudy. I mean, he's also a downfield guy. And he leads Denver at the same time. He leads the team with 4 targets inside the 10-yard line. Can we call Tim Patrick a sleeper?
1,000%. I mean,
I just think he's a number 3 wide receiver.
He's played 4 healthy games. And in those his last 4 healthy games, he's got a touchdown or 100 yards receiving in all of them.
One of the things I've altered from the projections to my rankings this week that maybe I shouldn't have. I actually in the projections had Tim Patrick ahead of Mike Evans and DJ Moore. I moved those guys ahead because that seems silly, but I think he's in that same range as those guys.
Okay. And KJ Hamler, no, right?
I mean, if you're desperate, he just had double-digit targets.
Yeah, he had 10. It was his first game with more than. Well, he had 6 targets in his previous 3 games combined, but he did have 10 last week at Atlanta.
They're starting to ramp him up. I mean, they got to figure out what they have.
Okay. Noah Fant is top 7. The Raiders allow the 10th fewest fantasy points to tight ends, but they haven't really faced a ton. Most of the good ones they faced have done pretty well. I don't know, are we giving Noah Fant a little bit too long of a leash?
Do I have to say the stat again?
Yes, because
Noah Fant is currently 5th amongst tight ends in fantasy points per game. If we're giving him too long of a leash, then we're giving the position too long of a leash, and it just shouldn't exist anymore.
But
which
in his
I would be in favor of.
He scored in weeks 1 and 2. Since then, he has 211 yards and no touchdowns in 5 games.
Probably better than both Mark Andrews and Hunter Henry over that stretch.
He's been banged up too, so factor that in, and they just lost Alberto, so maybe that helps him.
Yeah, it should. Okay, fine. Start him. Derek Carr. Derek Carr, starter sit. This is an interesting one. Starter sit Derek Carr. By the way, the Raiders not a high passing team. They throw the 7th fewest passes per game.
He has 3 games at home this year, which seems a little weird that they only played 3 at home in a new stadium. He's averaging 24 fantasy points per game in those 3. So he likes his new surroundings. I think the Denver defense is not very good. You can certainly look at the reason why Drew Locke is throwing the ball a lot is because they're chasing points because they stink. So, Carr is, to me, one of the more flukiest quarterbacks that we've seen because it's a big play to Nelson Aguilar. It's a big play to Henry Ruggs early in the season. It's not a lot of volume for him like you love to see from some of these fantasy quarterbacks. And that's kind of played itself out with his numbers the last few weeks. He's been under 20 fantasy points. But I think he's in that low-end starting range with Locke, with Tua, with Roethlisberger, guys that you may have some questions about or volume concerns about. But it's a good matchup, and his numbers at home suggest he's a decent play.
It's actually a good matchup, I guess, because they've given up at least 20 fantasy points to every quarterback except for Cam Newton, and at least 22 to every quarterback except for Cam Newton and Patrick Mahomes.
Mahomes scored 14 points.
I said at least 22 to every quarterback except Patrick Mahomes and Cam Newton.
Yeah. Okay. I thought you said just Newton, but okay.
And Mahomes was the snow game.
Yeah, it's only 23 pass attempts. So, not bad. And Josh Jacobs is a must start. Well, let me give you some more Carr or Roethlisberger.
I'll go Ben right now, but I want to wait and see, these at practice with the knee injury.
I would go with Carr, but it's really, really close.
Okay. Carr or Locke?
Locke for me.
Carr for Heath, Locke for Jamie. And Josh Jacobs is a must start. Nelson Aguilar or Bronco. Okay, rank the receivers. How about that? Broncos and Raiders.
Jeudy 1, Patrick 2, Aguilar 3, Renfrow 4, Hamler 5.
Yeah, I'd probably go Renfrow over Aguilar, but other than that, and I think Jeudy and Patrick are in a different range than Renfrow and Aguilar.
Okay. Aguilar, obviously, he's a big play guy. So we'll see if it happens. Doesn't get a ton of targets. And start Darren Waller. And that is the end of that game. Cincinnati at Pittsburgh. By the way, do we know if the Steelers are getting Avery Williamson this week? I would think
He
so.
He should be eligible to play, yes.
Right? Maybe that'll help their run defense a little bit. Got him in a trade with the Jets, and he had to sit out last week. So repeat stat of the game. Gave this one last week, but we'll update it now. Against Cincinnati, 10 of the last 11 receivers with 6 or more targets had either 86 yards or a touchdown. That's unbelievable. That's probably all 3 Pittsburgh wide receivers, 6 or more targets, 86 yards or a touchdown, 10 of the last 11 for against Cincinnati. So, all right. So what do you think about all of the receivers in this game? How many of them are top 36, I guess, or wide receivers 1 through 3?
On both sides or just Pittsburgh?
Yeah, all of them. There are 6 guys to talk about here.
I'd be a little bit nervous about AJ Green, just based on, his body of work. And T. Higgins is on the cusp. He's the 5th guy for me. But I would start all 3 Steelers receivers if you can. Depends on what you need. And format matters. Claypool better in non-PPR than PPR. But Deontay Johnson, for me, better in PPR than non-PPR. But I think they're all in play. It's one of those games where, I think that the Bengals receivers will get the yards. I don't know how many touchdowns they'll score. But, the Steelers receivers are always going to be in a tricky scenario. I think it's just a matter of what you have on your fantasy team.
Yeah, Boyd, Juju, and Claypool I'm starting. Higgins and Deontay Johnson are number 3s or flexes, and I don't really trust AJ Green.
Like, I could see, what'd you say, 86 yards or a touchdown?
Yeah.
Like, I could see Claypool scoring. I could see Juju and Deontay Johnson both above 80 receiving yards. It's just that's the nature of how your year has gone. One guy will score, maybe 2, and then the other 2 guys will get right around 80 or 90 yards.
Well, the Steelers are 7.5-point favorites, and you for the sake of Juju and for the sake of the Steelers passing game, you want the game to be close. Like last week when Roethlisberger ended up throwing a lot more than we thought he would. And the Bengals, look, they're 2-5-1, but they've only lost 1 game by more than 5 points. They got blown out at Baltimore 27-3. They've lost 2 games to Cleveland by a combined 8 points. They lost by 4 at Indianapolis. They beat Tennessee. Is Pittsburgh better than all those teams? Probably. They're undefeated. You hope they can keep it close. You hope they can keep it close. How would you compare the wide receivers in this game to like Giovanni Bernard, Mike Davis, Jerick McKinnon, these replacement running backs we talked about?
I think the problem is that these receivers, for the most part, are better PPR options than they are non-PPR options, just because they don't score a lot of touchdowns. And those running backs are better PPR options than they are non-PPR options. So if you're telling me that Mike Davis and Gio are probably going to be north of 5 receptions, which I think they will, I'm going to lean toward those guys because their carries will supersede what those receivers do, because the touchdowns are the thing you're chasing with those guys, and they just don't score a lot.
Yeah, I think Davis and Gio are ahead of all the receivers. McKinnon is kind of right in that. I'd start Boyd over McKinnon and maybe Juju too, but he's right in that range.
Okay.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Joe Burrow is a sit. And
he's not awful though.
Okay. But you do have him outside your top 20.
No. Again, refresh.
Okay. Joe Burrow, you have 4th. No, 17th. 17th.
I think I have him 19th. Yeah.
And 19th for I got him at 21. You got him 19 now? Okay.
19.
We'll move up to 19.
See, this is why you're great at your job, because you prepare ahead of time so well.
Yep.
And
Too
then
far ahead.
And then we screw you.
Sorry. Joe Mixon. Do you almost like Gio better than Mixon? If Mixon's out, do you like Gio better than Mixon?
Take the word almost away.
In this particular game, I would, because this is the type of game where they need him.
Where they need who?
They need a guy like Gio.
Well, just to clarify, if Mixon plays, you don't like Gio better than Mixon.
Correct.
You like Gio better if Mixon's out than right.
This just feels like a game where they're chasing points, they're throwing all over the place, and that's typically where they use Gio more. So you'd rather just have the ability to start Gio as opposed to being in this stuck situation where a guy with a foot injury may come in, may get hurt, and then you're screwed.
And I think like, and this is like 3 years now, Giovanni Bernard without Joe Mixon is better for fantasy than Joe Mixon with Giovanni Bernard, because Gio doesn't have to share the passing game work as much as Mixon does.
It'd be nice if Gio took a little sabbatical and we could see Joe Mixon.
Yeah.
With
I think we saw that for a little while, didn't we? It was really great. Like,
yeah,
Gio wasn't hurt. They just didn't let him play.
Right.
Last 3 games, Mixon had 6, and 2 catches.
It's interesting, just to sort of the tie in with the injury. Aaron Jones said yesterday that he appreciated the Packers saving him from himself. And I wonder how fantasy managers feel about that scenario, knowing that you lose a guy for a couple of weeks because he's hurt, as opposed to re-injuring himself and losing him for a significant stretch. Yeah. Not that it's guaranteed you would lose him for the significant stretch, but if I were to tell you right now, this player X is going to miss 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but you have him for 6 games after that, or 8 games after that, or 10 games after that, would you sign up for that?
Yeah, I'd rather that than him play hurt.
But again, there's also the scenario of playing through the injury and being okay.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it could go either way.
It's a tricky way. Yeah.
All right, so let me pick this up here. Joe Mixon is going to be like Mike Davis or Joe Mixon.
Mike Davis in PPR for sure. It's closer than none.
Yeah, Mike Davis.
Joe Mixon or James Robinson. That's easy, James Robinson. Joe Mixon or Juju Smith-Schuster.
I would take Juju in PPR.
Yep. Mixon and none.
The wide receivers, we kind of talked about them. Tyler Boyd is a must-start guy. And Higgins, a number 3 receiver. And Citru Sample. Ben Roethlisberger is, well, let's see. Yesterday, he was 13th or 14th in the rankings. Today, he's still 13th or 14th in the hooray. He hasn't moved. So he's close to Carr. He's close to Locke. He's a little ahead of Locke for Jamie. He's way ahead of Locke for Heath. How about Carson Wentz or Ben Roethlisberger?
Wentz.
I think I'd go Ben, but they're right in the same, like very, very close.
Well, I'm surprised by that because and the Locke thing surprises me too, because I usually think that you lean toward volume.
Yeah. Yeah, I generally, I mean, I don't have a huge separation in the pass attempts for Wentz and Roethlisberger. He's not been quite as pass heavy when Sanders has been healthy as he has been when it's just Boston Scott and Corey Clement.
So he goes from what, 45 to 40?
Yeah, I think I've got him at 37.
All right,
if you are hoping, you're hoping for a good game for Ben, you're hoping for the Bengals to keep this close, because like what we saw last week was ridiculous. Like nobody expected Roethlisberger to have to be in that situation because Dallas was so bad, and they were, third straight road game. Dallas came out with a good game plan, scored, and here we go. Steelers win a dogfight.
James Conner's top 10 in both formats. I think we've covered these wide receivers. Do both of you have Deontay Johnson last in this group? I know I
have Johnson ahead of Claypool in PPR. I just think his targets are usually more than Claypool's, but he's just having a hard time finding the end zone for the most part.
And Jamie's a lot higher on Eric Ebron, at least in non-PPR, than Heath is. It's pretty close in PPR. Dave's got Ebron top 5 in both formats. Heath has Ebron as like a low-end starter, but you're starting.
He's top 5 for me too. He's 4th.
Okay, even in PPR.
Yeah.
Jeez. Okay. Man. Sorry, the rankings changed a lot this week. Cincinnati allows the second most fantasy points to tight ends. Pittsburgh
While
DST
you sleep, I work, my friend. While you're asleep, I'm updating my rankings.
I'm not even going to respond to that. Houston at Cleveland.
Okay.
You and I are both up very late. We could have some late night texts.
We usually do.
I actually did update my rankings while you were sleeping, but it was at 6 a.m. this morning.
That was just before I woke up. All right, Houston up then too. At Cleveland. Welcome to football season. Houston at Cleveland. Stat of the game: a running back has scored 12 or more non-PPR fantasy points, 14 or more PPR fantasy points. Sorry. Let me correct it. A running back has scored 12 or more non-PPR fantasy points in 5 straight games against Cleveland. 14 or more PPR in 4 of 5 games against Cleveland. That would be Zeke, Jonathan Taylor, James Conner, Gio Bernard, Josh Jacobs. Duke Johnson, optimistic. Duke Johnson over Joe Mixon, right?
Yes.
Well, you tell me. Yes? Okay. So start Duke Johnson. Start Deshaun Watson. Easy to say start both wide receivers here. The Browns are terrible against wide receivers.
Yes.
Okay.
Start
them both. Houston tight end?
No.
Thank you.
All right, let's talk about Baker Mayfield here. I would tell you where he is in the rankings, but I don't know. So let's see what they are
I've
now.
got him, I think 15th or 16th.
All right, 18th for Jamie, 24th for Dave, and let's say 15th for Heath. So yeah, a little worried about the volume here if Nick Chubb plays, Heath. Are you worried about that?
I am, especially if the wind's a problem. He'll go down even more. But the one thing I would say is like this should be about as good as it gets for Baker Mayfield because they are facing a bad defense that it also has an offense that should keep them in a position where they have to keep scoring. And so if like this is about as high as I think I've ranked Baker Mayfield all season long, it's still not in the top 12. I would rather not start him, but I think he'll have a decent game.
Okay. And Jamie, not as much.
I mean, it's volume for him. You know, that's the thing. It's his best game this season. His best game of his career was against the Bengals, and he was under 30 pass attempts in that game. You know, it's just that's what he is. You know, it's going to be a situation where he needs touchdowns. He needs, you know, his receivers to make some plays after the catch. And this is one of those scenarios where the matchup is fantastic. I mean, he could have another 5-touchdown game. It wouldn't shock me like he did against the Bengals in the game where Beckham got hurt. And now he's getting not only Chubb back, who's going to, you know, threaten the defense to soften things up, but he's getting Hooper back too. You know, hopefully Landry's healthy. You know, there's a lot to like about Baker aside from that big thing, which is, hey, I know what the Browns plays are too. Run. Hey, maybe throw. Run. You know, so I'll send JJ Watt a text telling them what they're gonna do. But he's a decent streaming option if you picked him up off a bye week. But it wouldn't shock me if somebody like Nick Foles outscores him because Foles is going to throw the ball 45 times.
That's exactly the decision I have to make, Jamie. That's exactly my two.
I would play Baker. But
I'm hoping for a win, so I can easily make that decision.
Yeah, I'm looking at Kevin Roth's story on Roto Grinders, his early weather report, and he has it at 19 miles an hour as of now. But also looks like it could be some potential rain.
All right, to the Cleveland running backs, Nick Chubb is a start if he plays. Kareem Hunt is an obvious start if Chubb doesn't play. If Chubb does play, though, I know you're going to say start Kareem Hunt, but like, who would you start him over?
Almost everyone.
Okay.
I would start him over Nick Chubb.
How about?
Well. I would in PPR. Non-PPR, I'd go back to Chubb.
How about Brandon Cooks or Kareem Hunt?
Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, Hunt. Both formats.
I have both guys top 10 and just flipped in each format.
Yeah. This might be the worst rushing defense in football. They give up the most rushing yards to running backs, the most yards per carry to running backs. They're terrible. Bad defense. Cleveland wide receivers, Jarvis Landry and Rashard Higgins. Higgins only rostered in 37% of leagues. He did have 100 yards 2 games ago. Any interest here, Heath, in Landry or Higgins?
Landry is a low-end number 2, high-end number 3. If he gets the same targets that he did in the last game before the bye, then you're going to feel pretty good about starting him rest of the season, I think. Higgins is a boom bust flex. It would be interesting to see. Like, we didn't really see this offense without Beckham in normal conditions. So it'll be interesting to see with Hooper back what the target breakdown is.
You did get a good enough sample size, though, because Beckham got hurt early enough in that Bengals game to see what could happen. But yes, in terms of not knowing what the script is, not knowing what the game plan is without Beckham, you're 100% right. I think the one thing about Higgins is he's not necessarily a beat the waiver wire guy, but he is a guy if you're stuck to go look at, because if you're going to buy into Baker, I think Higgins is going to have some semblance of production here. So it's not because Landry he's not scoring touchdowns. We'll see if that changes, but it's not like Beckham was scoring touchdowns, so it's not like the receivers were carrying carrying Baker. And in the game where Baker had success, it was the tight ends, but I think he's going to have somebody step up. And Higgins was that guy in that Bengals game.
Landry, for the record, does have at least one almost touchdown. So
and he has a passing touchdown.
Texans give up the 6th most fantasy points to wide receivers. In 4 games, they've allowed 100 yards or a touchdown or both to multiple wide receivers. I don't think that's going to happen, but there's a good chance that at least one of these guys has a good game. It's such a good matchup and such a bad defense. And Austin Hooper is top 10. I think he's top 5 for Dave. You're going to start Austin Hooper.
Is Bradley Roby playing? Have we seen the practice report?
Probably. I mean, he was healthy. He just got suspended. So I would assume he's playing. He and Golden Tate will be back after serving their suspensions. I don't know. With the update we have is expected to play in week 10. Cool. All right, next up, Chargers at Dolphins. Stat of the game. A running back has scored 11 or more non-PPR fantasy points. This is very similar to the last stat of the game. 11 or more non-PPR, 13 or more PPR fantasy points in 6 straight games against the Chargers. They have a terrible run defense. Mike Davis, Ronald Jones, Alvin Kamara, James Robinson, Phillip Lindsay, Devontae Booker, Josh Jacobs. All of these guys reached that 11 or more non-PPR, 13 or more PPR fantasy points. So does that mean anything to you guys? Like, is there any Dolphins running back we can confidently go with?
First of all, how do you pronounce the guy's name? Because I said it wrong. I don't want to say it again on another podcast yesterday.
Who? Selvin Ahmed?
See, I said it that way, and then the host said it very differently.
I have no. I honestly don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't.
That's our
the host
bad.
say it.
I'm not even gonna try and say it because it may be incorrect as well. So
okay.
In any event, they legit have 4 guys that could be involved here if Matt Breida plays, because Jordan Howard is going to probably get short yardage work, so he's going to be the guy that could score touchdowns.
Okay, yeah, we butchered it. It's Savon Ahmed.
Yeah, that's the way they said it.
There you go, Savon Ahmed.
Right.
Sorry,
So,
that's. I'm sorry about that.
No, I feel the same way. He was the guy who played the most last week, and then you have Deandre Washington, and we just don't know what's going to happen there. The guy that they traded for, so he's eligible to play. So let's assume Breida doesn't play. So take him out of the equation. I don't know which of the 3 guys is going to be the best. I would rank Ahmed the highest because he played the most of the first game without Myles Gaskin. But Jordan Howard is going to take a touchdown away. It's just, that's the frustrating part of this. So it's a backfield you probably want to avoid.
How about the Chargers backfield, Heath?
Yeah.
Say it. Just say the guy.
Rewind all those things. Kailyn Bellage, I suppose, is currently the best Chargers running back. I don't have much interest. I mean, he's sitting around 30 in my rankings. I expect, assuming that Troymaine Pope remains out, assuming that Justin Jackson remains out, that Bellage is going to get like 60% of the touches, and Joshua Kelly is going to get the other 30%, and it's going to be ugly. This is a good Dolphins defense. It's a bad matchup. It's uncertain touch share. It's uncertain offensive line. It's uncertain quality of running back. I'd rather not, but I like Kailyn Bellage better than any Dolphins running back.
Now, Troymaine Pope, thanks to Ben Tracker, expected to play.
Yeah, I would actually pick up Troymaine Pope. Like
there you go.
That's like, we don't have it ranked that way because we typically keep guys out that have missed the week prior unless there's certainty they're going to play. Once Pope is cleared to play, and it sounds like that's going to be the case, I will have him as the highest Chargers ranked running back.
He will be the highest ranked running back in this game for me, but none of the running backs in this game will be in my top 30.
Right. This is more of a desperation flex play because, like he said, the matchup against Miami is not easy. Chase Edmonds just showed us that. They gave him as many carries as a running back could potentially have for 2 games worth, and he had, a struggle. So I think if you're just looking at it, is the creativity of the Chargers offense and what they've been doing with their running backs, because they've had success without Austin Eckler. I mean, the Saints game, Justin Jackson was solid, nearly 100 total yards. The game, the Jaguars game, I guess not so much, but whoever they played after the Jaguars game, that was the Troymaine Pope and Justin Jackson game where both guys went off. And then last week, Kailyn Bellage had a good game, so
right.
There's a guy that will be in the flex range. For me, it would be Pope, because if Pope plays, they may keep Kailyn Bellage on the practice squad. There's no guarantee they have to elevate him. Okay,
just to wrap it up, I think we've talked enough about this. To be clear, the Dolphins did a really good job against Chase Edmonds, but they had going into that game a pretty bad run defense. Like, advanced metrics would have said it, conventional metrics would have said it. You think it should be getting a little bit better, but they got good personnel, but they hadn't. It had not been a tough matchup. Edmonds really disappointed. Okay, so Justin, just a bit. Justin Herbert is top 7. I just don't see how you can sit him. He doesn't get blitzed a lot. And the Dolphins are one of the most blitz-heavy teams in the NFL. However, the Bucs are the most blitz-heavy team in the NFL, and he lit them up. Keenan Allen is a start. Mike Williams, you guys have as a number 4 wide receiver. I was a little confused by that. He's been really good 3 of the last 4 games. Heath, why so low on Mike Williams?
I think it's still just, for me, uncertainty about target volume and not a great matchup.
Okay.
He's probably getting Xavier Howard, and Howard made things uncomfortable for DeAndre Hopkins last week.
Yeah, and the refs, but yes.
But
got a lot of pass interferences, but he was great.
This is a good secondary when they're healthy, and they've been healthy now for the last several weeks. So I think Mike Williams is a guy you can get away from.
Hunter Henry, big rankings dispute here. Let me see the updated rankings. As of yesterday, it was like 7 spots. All right, Henry in PPR, 13th for Jamie, 14th for Dave, 5th for Heath. All right, Heath, go for it.
Like that's how I feel about Hunter Henry. It's so hard to believe that Justin Herbert can be the best rookie quarterback ever, and Hunter Henry can get 7 targets per game and somehow not score any fantasy points. And I haven't totally bought into that. Like, he is right. It wouldn't be that difficult for me to drop him down to 9th possibly, but I'm just going to keep betting on the targets in Justin Herbert eventually connecting with him.
Let me ask you just a comparison, because I think the targets probably the last 4 games are very close. Where do you have Jimmy Graham ranked? 2 spots behind Henry. Like, they are in a very, very similar. The difference in their projection is less than a quarter of a point. So I think it's a coin flip between those 2 guys. And then Hooper and Goddard.
Oh, right. Hooper's right behind Graham. Goddard, I'm a little bit more leery of, just because of how, like, the shake the rust off game. I'd like to make sure that all the rust is off now, because he wasn't even used in his first game back.
Yeah.
Jamie, you have Mike Gesicki 1 spot ahead of Henry, and neither have been very productive. Gesicki's only had
I'm going with the hope of matchups better for Gesicki against the Chargers than it is for Henry against the Dolphins, and the loss of Preston Williams. I'm just hoping that it's going to help Gesicki. So I have no problem, and I would probably do this. And I may switch it, because I think it's probably safer to go with Henry, because this is more of a hope than it is a certainty, because we just haven't seen Gesicki used.
All right, finishing up here with the Dolphins. Tua is 14th for Jamie, 13th for Dave, and 19th for Heath. Would you start Tua over Drew Locke this week?
I would.
No, I like Locke better, but I like both.
Start Tua or Derek Carr?
Tua.
Carr.
Would you start Tua or Mayfield?
Tua.
Mayfield.
Tua or Tannehill?
Tua.
Tannehill. You're just going to ask everyone that
on one guy. Starter sit Devontae Parker.
Yes.
Start him.
Who's a sleeper wide receiver with Preston Williams out?
Jakeem Grant. Yeah. I think he might be their only other receiver.
Dolphins DST is top 12. All right, 3 games.
I wonder if they regret that Isaiah Ford trade now.
Maybe. 3 games, 10 minutes. Here we go. Jacksonville at Green Bay. Start Rodgers. Start Robinson. Start Jones. Start Adams. DJ Chark. Okay, yeah, we'll start him. But DJ Chark or the Texans guys?
Fuller, Chark, Cooks for me.
I think that may be exactly how. I know Fuller's ahead of him. Cooks was the one I wasn't. Yeah, I've got it like literally 16, 17, 18. Fuller, Chark, Cooks.
And how about Chark or let's do some running backs. Chark or Joe Mixon?
Chark in non-PPR. Chark in PPR, Mixon non-PPR.
Okay. Heath has Tunyon 12th, 13th, I think, in PPR. And Jamie's got him like 18th. I already talked about
15. He's around 15.
16. Okay, I see. There you go. I already talked about Allen Lazard and why he could have a good game, or Marquez Valdez-Scantling. We'll call them DFS flyers. But the Jaguars, again, it's 9 wide receivers in their last 5 games have what the hell was it? It was a lot. Have done really well about that.
Does
84
Lazard
yards,
have to play this
84 yards
week?
per touchdown.
Is this the 21 days? Does it expire this week?
That's a good question.
I don't remember the day that. Let me check.
Okay, that's that game. Packers DST or Dolphins DST?
You said Packers or Dolphins?
Yeah.
I would go Packers.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay. Packers or Ravens?
Ravens.
Speaking of which, Baltimore at New England. Oh, I like this stat of the game. Number 1 stat of the game. New England has allowed 92 or more yards to a wide receiver in 4 straight games. Tim Patrick, Brandon Ayuk, Stephon Diggs, and Brashad Perryman. They all had 7 to 9 targets, which is asking a lot from Marquise Brown. He only has 2 games with more than 6 targets. But Stephon Gilmore also missed 2 of those games. But it's 92 or more yards to a wide receiver in 4 straight games for against New England. So there's that. And stat of the game number 2 is just about how good the Patriots have been against tight ends. So we already talked about that. So, yeah, I mean, Marquise Brown, Jamie, I have to start him, but like, who should I start over him if I had other options? Should I start Jacoby Myers over Marquise Brown?
I would not. I just think he's hopefully a better version of Marquez Valdes-Scantling at this point. He's a lesser version of Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks and DJ Chark, and I know that's not saying much, but the typical volume that you like is just not there for him. But the matchup is not bad at all if Gilmore doesn't play. But it's all a matter of, are they going to give him an opportunity to make some plays? So primetime game, I could see him have a strong performance, but he's a number 3 receiver. You just have to treat him as such. He's not a must start. He's not a must sit. He's just kind of in that gray area that depends on what your team has. So
the Patriots are easy. Get away from the Patriots. We were talking about it on Tuesday's waiver wire show. If you want maybe 10, 11 points from Jacoby Myers, that's what he had first 2 games. Maybe it was like 11 or 12 PPR fantasy points. Yeah, that's more realistic than the big game he had last week against the Jets. But for the Ravens,
just keep in mind something with Jacoby Myers, though, because N'Keal Harry's practicing coming back from the concussion, and Isaiah Ford is eligible to play. So while Myers should be the best of that group, it would not surprise me if those other guys just make it a very uncomfortable thing for Jacoby Myers fantasy managers, because you starting him after what he is, and he's projected very highly on our site. I think he's projected for 12 PPR points. So given the matchup, that to me is high.
He's the only wide receiver that Cam Newton seems to have had any chemistry with, though. They are
for sure. But again, if the Ravens are going to take him away, to whatever extent they try to take him away, whether it's Humphrey or Peters or whatever, Cam is going to have to start to look at other guys. I mean, he still threw to Demir Bird. He still threw to, well, no, he didn't throw to anybody else against.
No, he doesn't. That's the thing. Like, N'Keal Harry is not getting a ton of targets when he played.
N'Keal Harry hasn't played in like a month.
I know, but I'm saying but he wasn't getting a ton of targets.
I don't think those guys have played together since the Seattle game or the Raiders game.
Okay. Marlon Humphrey, by the way, is off the COVID list, so he should play this week, and that he's probably going to cover.
The Ravens did announce that they had another positive test this morning. We don't know who that was yet, but they also said there were no high-risk contacts, so I guess it'll only be one person going on a list.
Okay. Why are you guys so confident in Lamar Jackson?
I mean, the Patriots aren't good. And he's typically, gives you the rushing floor. So you start there. It's more just the Patriots aren't good.
Okay.
It's probably also some FOMO.
Right.
Primetime game. Put on a show, Ravens. He has scored 15 to 19 points in 5 of 8 games. It is scary, but the Patriots, I say this every week, they give up the most passing yards per attempt in the NFL. And let's talk. Give me the Ravens running backs, Heath, if Ingram plays and if he doesn't.
If Ingram plays, I just don't want any part of it, really. Like, I think I'd probably still have Dobbins ranked the highest. I would have Ingram ahead of Edwards. None of them would be in my top 25. If Ingram doesn't play, then I like Dobbins as a number 2 running back and Edwards as a high-end flex, or maybe a low-end number 2 in non-PPR.
Here's what I would do if I was, I want to just see what his roster percentage is. Gus Edwards' roster percentage right now is 52%. If you see that Ingram practices again today, I would drop Gus Edwards for the 2 following running backs. One would be LaMichael Pirine, just to see what happens coming off their bye week. And the other would be Troymaine Pope, just in case Justin Jackson in this absence lingers and Pope becomes the better of the non-Austin Eckler guys.
Okay. And it's worth noting, by the way, that they basically played 3 games in a row without Ingram. He got hurt in one of them. And Gus Edwards has a touchdown in every game, and J.K. Dobbins does not have a touchdown. So,
but more likely to happen, though, is Dobbins continues to play close to what his role is with Ingram, whereas Edwards...
like the same... Oh, no. Oh, yeah, no. If Ingram plays, I get that. But if Ingram doesn't play, I don't know why we would rank Dobbins ahead of Edwards.
Well, it's the ceiling versus the floor. If Edwards doesn't score, you're screwed.
Both of them. I mean, they both have done like the same thing in the 3 games. 2 pretty bad games and 1 great game in terms of rushing yards.
Well, I throw out the game Ingram got hurt.
I mean, they've also faced the Eagles, the Steelers, and the Colts.
Yeah, the Patriots stink. They are so bad against the run. Philip Lindsay, Jeff Wilson, Jermichael Hasty, the Bills running backs, they ran all over the Patriots. All right, that's it for that game. One more game. Buffalo at Arizona. We spent a lot of time talking about Christian Kirk and John Brown, so please rewind to the 60-second rankings disputes if you want to hear that. And Josh Allen's top 5. Kyler Murray is number 1 for everyone. Is there anything we didn't cover in this game? I mean, pretty much and if you go to the Startometer segment, we talked a lot about the running backs in this game. But Heath, give me the running backs for Arizona with and without Kenyon Drake.
If Kenyon Drake's out, I'm going right back to Chase Edmonds as a must-start running back. Not holding last week against him at all. If Drake's in, then Edmonds is more of a PPR flex, and Drake is a low-end number 2 or a high-end flex in that 20 to 25 range of running backs.
I would start Edmonds over both Broncos running backs in PPR. If Drake
plays. If Drake plays, is Kenyon Drake the best running back in this game? Is he better than Zach Moss?
Yeah. For me.
I would play Moss over Drake in non-PPR.
In non-PPR? But Drake doesn't catch passes.
Neither does Moss, though. And I think the likelihood of Drake still with 1 or 2 catches is, for me, better than Moss. I'd probably rank Drake over Moss in non-PPR, too.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Drake, the Bills' run defense is not very good. So this might actually be a good opportunity for Kenyon Drake if he's going to go back to his role, get 16 carries or so.
18. I mean, that's kind of what it was.
Yeah, and that, might not be that bad. I'd like for him to sit, though. That'd be wonderful. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. We got the
how are we all in so many leagues together and we all have Chase Edmonds?
I only have him in 1 league. And I'm going to get screwed because I have to start Jonathan Taylor. I'll tell you what, if Chase Edmonds, if Kenyon Drake is out, you guys might not agree with this. I'm going to play Chase Edmonds over Mike Davis in a PPR league.
I would too.
Okay. Yep. Good. Okay, good. Whew. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
I mean, what's the format with Taylor and Edmonds?
PPR.
I'd still play Edmonds.
There's just not enough there. There's just not enough work.
But I mean, Taylor could be on the bench for half the game.
I haven't made that decision yet. Going right down to the gun. Maybe y'all can help me out today on Twitch. We'll talk to you at 4 p.m. Eastern.
Oh, you're on FFT today, buddy.
I am. Make sure you watch Fantasy Football Today, noon Eastern. For Jamie and Heath and Ben Schrager, I'm Adam Azer. See you later.
Want more of the Fantasy Football Today podcast and nonstop year-round fantasy advice? It's simple. Hit the subscribe button and hang with us all throughout the year.